Hello, I'm Justin Perkins. This is Talk Junkie, and I've threatened to do it for a while, especially amidst this pandemic. We've spoken about prepping, and I said, well, I used to be a prepper, and I would talk about prepping. I used to see things a lot differently than I do now. In a lot of various areas, we've covered the conspiracy theory deal. My mind's changed a lot on that. But I think that in some ways that podcast may misrepresented me in some ways. Like, there's things that are much horrible than the conspiracy theories I believe that were real. The MK Ultra project, the Gulf of Tonkin, things like that I know are real. I still very much believe that they're real, but I don't put them in the same category as conspiracy theory because they're real, even though they may be in the same type of thing that people fear, that government overreach or control. My political outlook has changed as well. I've been a flip-flopper, as some people have called it, for a good portion of my life, going from party to party, depending on who's running and things of that nature. I know no longer. I'd have to say this one thing. When I was 16, I realized both parties were bad, and then I kind of forgot that, and then it kind of came back to me. So, if you're trying to tell me that one party's better than the other at this point in life, I'm an adult. Grow up. Keep that opinion to yourself. Just do what you need to do with that opinion. I've been there. I've been down that route. I don't subscribe to it. The proof is irrefutable. The evidence is not there to support your claim. Both parties are equally as bad. They're after the same goal, and there's no such thing as a lesser evil. That's probably the most idiotic statement I've ever heard in my life. Now, having said that, a lot of those things are what took me out of being a prepper. A prepper, in the sense that I've always understood it, I guess, is a paranoid, scared person who puts back all these vital needs that they'll have at the end of the world. And that's very much the way I looked at it for a long time. And I did that. We put back food. I put back ammunition, which I didn't have an arsenal of guns. I had 2 at the time. But I did put back quite a bit of ammunition for both. Hunting would be a necessity. Even though I can't hunt, kill, or gut and clean any animal whatsoever. That's completely impossible for me. I still put the ammunition back. At the time, my son, which he still has issues with eating, and that was kind of my big concern, is what if something happened to the grid? What if something just happened to the supply chain? At that time, my son only drank chocolate milk out of a bottle, ate popcorn, and occasionally some pretzels. So pretzels don't hold a very good shelf life, but I found a way to store popcorn with oxygen packs just to seize where I could pop it. It did hold a good shelf life, and this is before I become particular about it being a certain brand of popcorn. I would keep powdered milk and chocolate powder, even though it was a type of chocolate milk he wouldn't drink. I thought in a worst case scenario. Kept medicines. My son will not take oral medicines. The only medicines he'll take are either IV, which we can't do, or rectal. So, anything for temperature, anything like that was rectal, we kept. Any type of liquid medicine that we can maybe sneak into something, we kept. And I kept a lot of medical supplies, things of that nature. Nothing really crazy. A lot of the freeze-dried meals, but we kept quite a bit. And again, I was worried about, a natural disaster or a power outage. I wasn't necessarily worried about a global issue by any means whatsoever, really. What I was more worried about was a localized incident. to me, living in a city is a very dangerous thing in a time like this because high population, low resources, and which we don't live in a city, but we do live in Eastern Kentucky, which makes us the last priority when something like this happens, and that's very real. I still very much feel that way. So if something happens, we're the last ones they're coming to check on. Now, in regards to that, my concerns was always that it would be a local thing, maybe a prolonged power outage, maybe an earthquake. There's a large fault that comes through. Anyway, numerous issues that I thought may affect us, and I always looked at prepping to be for a short-term situation. There was a point in time to where there was a small little short moment in time where I was more afraid of maybe a global issue. That's when I was very much watching the news and felt like, okay, I need to check on both parties, and by both parties I mean their news organizations. I need to watch both parties' news, and I need to read as much because I thought that would allow me to kind of catch up on the BS that each party was putting out. It was a different thought process than I have now, and what that done for me is what it I think is designed to do for most people. I took in an absorbent amount of news, and so I reflected a much higher rate of fear, and I think that's kind of what the media is there for. It's a fear-based system because that really gets you ratings. I mean, it really does. We want to be scared. We want to see the worst in things. That's who we are. It's unfortunate, but even the best of us, I think a lot of times that's who we are. I think it's just a part of human nature that we've not quite learned to evolved past yet. Now, in regards to this global situation, whatever it may be that I was worried about, I never had a real idea of which one I thought was most likely. I guess now pandemic would take the top of that list. But either way, I made some life changes. I quit watching the news. I monitored how I got the news, how I intake the news. And I started looking at a lot of foreign news. And I'll tell you, that'll change you politically. That'll change so many things about the way you look at stuff. But in a lot of ways, it'll take so much of the pressure and anxiety out of life because the rest of the world kind of isn't on this negative kick that we're on, and they kind of see the good sometimes where we don't. But cutting out major news networks and stuff like that was something that once that came, I didn't quit prepping, but my thought process on it changed a little. A lot of things happened. I sit and try to just cut it down to what exactly was it. That's hard to do. It was definitely news changing, a change in political ideology, but also I think the type of information I was starting to allow myself to take in, statistical data and things of that nature, on where we kind of are globally. And so I relaxed those concerns and that lifestyle. Now, eventually, things like Doomsday Preppers come out, and, after about a season of a show like that, you feel kind of ridiculous after you watch certain, and I'm like, okay, maybe I need to really reassess what I'm doing. We just slowly ate up the food. It was kind of a game at first. It's like, I wonder what this tastes like. And, just slowly used up the stuff. We didn't waste it. We used it, and the stockpile was gone. And it literally was that uneventful to quit prepping. It became just kind of passe, I guess. And we just, my wife was never crazy about it. She was never to the level I was at. She liked the idea of having the extra stuff around in case we needed it, but I like to go. I was like, ooh, let's buy the $500 worth of 10 years shelf life food. Like I would go crazy with stuff like that. But my wife was much more sensible and I guess kind of logical about the process. So it didn't get us crazy with her. But it's not like we had a ton of stuff either. I mean, we had stuff, but it was fairly easy to use that stuff and incorporate it into everyday life. I don't think I would have ever given prepping a second thought until the pandemic situation we're in now hit. And when it initially hit, my first thought wasn't, oh man, I need supplies. My first thought was, I wonder where we're going to be able to go from here, what we're going to be able to do, what's it looking like medically, things of that nature. I think to this point, if people had reacted suitably, I would not have had any rethinking on the whole prepping issue. If there hadn't been panic buyers and there hadn't been things of that nature. Now, let me preface that with saying this: we keep about 10 to 12 bags of popcorn at all times before this ever happened. My son has sensory processing, and he eats IGA brand popcorn. Occasionally, he will accept Act 2, but that is on a rare occasion. It's no other brand whatsoever, and he can smell the popcorn and tell you if it's his brand or not. You're not going to trick him. My son eats French fries currently from Hyman Dairy Queen, where I live. No other Dairy Queen. He acknowledges that the other Dairy Queens taste the same. He just doesn't want them, and he can tell, for the most part, almost any restaurant from Hyman. Now, Hazard, which is another place local to us, he will not eat their fries from there. He can tell immediately if they're from there, and he just doesn't like them. He doesn't eat fries from any other restaurant. It's infuriating sometimes when I try to have the discussion about picky eaters or people, and I'll say, well, my son only eats Dairy Queen French fries, and they'll go, well, my son's the same way. Some days he won't eat McDonald's, some days he won't eat. My son's never had French fries from any other restaurant. This is the only French fries he will eat at all, ever, and he won't try other things without vomiting. This is it. There's not an exception. This is it. He drinks water now because they changed the ingredients in Capri Sun. He drinks nothing else. I mean, most parents would be tickled to death their kids don't drink soda. I am tickled he doesn't drink pop, but yes, we've offered it. No, he won't drink it. No juices, nothing to that effect. My son eats IGA brand popcorn, Dairy Queen French fries. Then we have two other foods that are occasional foods. Occasionally puff corn, and occasionally yogurt. The yogurt is very occasionally. It has to be strawberry, and he'll eat it for a week or two, maybe once or twice a year. Now, he will eat Hershey's and only Hershey's chocolate bars. It has to be the full-size bar. It can't be the king size, just the full-size bar. Obviously, we're not excited that he eats that, but that's his 5 foods, 2 of which are permanent. And one of which we can only get at a certain store at IGA. So going into this, I was in no panic. We have the infrastructure and the food and things of that nature to support our country for a fairly long time. That's one of the benefits in living in the United States of America. But something that I realized amidst this is our real concern in a situation like this are people that are not very well informed, people who are irrational, and people with an agenda. That's the main concern in a situation like this. Panic buying, and I understand people get scared, and they get scared because they're not informed, and they get scared because they're influenced by people with an agenda, and they get scared because they've never had this type of situation. I guess living in the mountains and living in a community that deals more with poverty and deals more with harder times, I'm very fortunate. We were not rich by any stretch of the imagination, but we never really went without. My wife was brought up pretty hard, but we still understand the value of things to a certain degree here. I really believe that. I've had that conversation with people before, and they say, well, drug users and people that don't understand it. Well, no, they're in a different situation where they're at. They may not understand the value in the things that you understand the value in, but you understand the value in life that they don't understand at the time. It's a different situation. But I think for the most part, mountain people up till this point have had a different value on things. So I didn't expect a mass buyout of things. And that's kind of what I saw. I went in, the toilet paper thing I've never understood. I still don't to this day. I think it's a comfort item. I really do. And I don't know. So I really didn't have an issue with it being bought out. I never seen it as bad as it was proclaimed to be. I mean, the off-brand and different types of toilet paper were always there. I never seen a situation. Not to say that it didn't happen. Me personally, I never experienced a situation where there was no toilet paper to be had. The water situation, understandable to a certain degree. I have friends on all spectrums. I have a friend that's very distrusting of city water, of the fluoride in the water, and I can see his kind of viewpoint there. I wasn't worried about water for my wife and myself, and our in-laws we live together currently, but I was worried about water for my son. He'll only drink Nestle. It has to be the small bottles, not the full size. Again, it's all in his head, but if something triggers that he doesn't like taste-wise, he is willing. He has the willpower to shut down and not eat for a week or longer. It's happened. He's had to be put in the hospital, put on IV, because he's thrown up and quit eating and drinking completely, and can go for I believe 6 days is what he went last time without putting anything in that they weren't putting in, and that's scary. Just barely drinking but not eating it, and it's almost like he doesn't feel the hunger pains, because he definitely has a different pain reception than we do. He feels pain differently. I don't know how to explain that, but regardless, I worried about water for him. And living in the mountains, we have the ability to get spring water, and there's access to water for us that's still, in my opinion, clean to this up till now. To what level we destroy that from here on out, I don't know, but up to this point there's still access. There's a small spring above us to where I could get water enough to sustain, and you can always boil water. In cities, though, again, you come into that situation of large population, no resources. Fresh water is not likely. I don't know, New York, you're getting water out of the Hudson River. I'm assuming you can boil out what's in there. I don't know what's in there, to what degree, to how much you have to boil, and that's not, I think people want to throw that all on people in cities that, I'm sure that pollution comes from other areas along that river as well. But, that is a worrisome situation that I didn't feel we had here, but the massive amount of water bought here convinced me otherwise. It showed me two things. One, man, we waste a lot of plastic bottles, which I'm just as guilty of. I'd like to find a way around that, and we're looking at a filtration device. I've actually bought it. I'm trying to get it put in and switch to that with some reusable bottles. But we also don't look at what we have around us. So once people started panic buying everything, including the water, which again, in the vein of panic buying, is somewhat logical. The canned foods would be the next logical, although I had no problem finding canned foods for a little bit. Then there was a short time where canned foods were gone. Meat, fresh meat, was the big sellout item, which I didn't understand. It's possible to do without. You can substitute with canned goods. So we bought some canned goods. Now, we said here it's May. I've not been keeping up with the days. I don't have that kind of interest. The situation is what the situation is. That's the way I see it. And I do, however, feel that based on this, I do feel we'll come out of this. I don't feel that people realize how fortunate we've been through this. The numbers are very low compared to what they thought they would be, compared to what really they should be for what they say it is. And that could change tomorrow, but up to this point it hasn't. So we should be thankful for that up to this point. But also, this could have been much worse. And I'm very worrisome that we will get that situation that is much worse, that disease or something that is much worse than our current situation. And I think that this current situation will result in a new resurgence in prepping once this is over. I definitely will look at it differently once this is over. We had a storm as well the other day. No power for a couple of days. I'd ordered a case of popcorn from the IGA because they don't always stock it. Because it has to be the butter. It can't be the extra butter or the light butter. So they don't always keep an abundance of it in stock. So we order a box every so often, just a case on top of what we buy. So that left me with 20-some bags of popcorn for my son. The power went out the other day, so we were 2 days, I believe, without power. Some people ended up being 4 or 5 days, maybe 6. If we had been a week without power and they had still been sold out of popcorn, because the Dairy Queen in Hyman didn't have power either. If we'd have been one of those groups of people a week without power, we'd run out of popcorn in that week. Dairy Queen was closed, and we'd run out of Nestle water. In the midst of all of this going on, our son would have had to go back into the hospital for not eating, because we wouldn't have been able to provide for him the popcorn and water, to substitute for the French fries. I know that's a horrible diet, and you have to understand, we've been to specialists, we've been to doctors, we're in programs, we've been in and out of programs. As soon as the program's over, they try to find us a new occupational therapist. We're working really hard to change that diet. It's just not working. It will at some point. So once this is said and done, I will definitely go back to prepping at a certain level. I feel like I owe that to my son. And I owe that to us. And I don't mean going overboard. I mean a certain amount of water put back, definitely a certain amount of popcorn put back, a certain amount of canned foods and things of that nature put back, so that in a worst case situation, we have the ability to feed our son, because our daughter is, she has none of those issues. She's grown, but she has none of those issues with eating, never did. My wife and I, can make it. He's really the worrisome issue right now. But I think prepping is looked down on and kind of looked at as a crazy way of living and existing. And not only did I exist in that crazy manner, to that extreme for a while, I also looked down on it equally as much once I left. But I think that if we really kind of look at it objectively, and if you do it in a sensible manner with, first of all, if you want to go crazy with it, go crazy with it. Life's short. Do what you want to do with it. And if what you want to do is look towards the end all the time, then look towards the end. Whatever you miss along the way, you miss. I don't want to miss the things along the way. But in case something happens along the way, I want to be prepared for it. And just to a degree of survival. So, once this is over, because I do feel that this is going to end, and things return to normal, in a non-panic, slow, sensible manner, I'm going to set up a plan and try to keep the things I need to make life comfortable and safe in an emergency. And I think that's the big thing is, it's what I'd done towards the end of prepping. I'd scaled down and started to do, and it's something that if I started now, it's the way I would want to do it. Looking at, the popcorn I know is a must. The water I know is a must, okay? What's the high shelf life food, okay? How many cans of that or whatever, it's looking at it in a methodical type of way and in a planned out type of way. I want 2 weeks of emergency foods, okay? And, 2 weeks isn't a long time, but 2 weeks of emergency foods to me is canned goods, things of that nature. Now, maybe I want a month of catastrophe food, and that's a month worth of freeze-dried foods. I want alcohol, which is impossible to get right now. Not drinking alcohol, rubbing alcohol. I want some hand sanitizer put back. Not 55 gallons of hand sanitizer. I want 4 or 5 bottles of hand sanitizer put back. I want N95 masks put back. Not 250, not 500, not 1,000 N95 masks. I want, maybe 5 per family member. I want 1 box of latex gloves. Now, for me, the job I work in, we handle some materials and coating a pipe occasionally that I use those. So I can cycle those in and out and I don't have to keep them for a long time. And that makes it easier. I may want a very moderate and sensible supply of fever reducers and things of that nature. So you can do it without going crazy. I want a good flashlight. I want a fire starter. I want a water pump, a water purifier. I'm going to keep one of those to hike anyway. So, if you're an outdoorsman, it's easy to kind of change these things in and out. You can recycle and go through your freeze-dried meals when you camp and bring new ones in. So, it's possible to do. I'm going to do it. I'm not going to go crazy with it. And I think that it's something that, older families, especially in the mountains, used to do. They'd can beans, they'd can all these foods. And the shelf life on these things, like pickles, I don't know if pickles can ruin. The shelf life on these things, and I did say ruin and not ruin. I'm from the mountains, I'm going to tell you. But I think mountain families definitely had to do that. You had to do that to make it through the winters. You had to do it to make it through bad crop years. You had to do it to make it through booms and busts in the coal industry. So we are a little more suited for it. But I think emergency planning and management in those situations is important. And I'm going to be one of those crazy doomsday preppers again. Just a little less crazy this time and a lot less ammunition. But I don't know. I'd threatened to do one of these forever about prepping. And let me know. Do you prep? Do you keep anything? Has this changed your mind any? What do you think? I'm getting another group of stuff together for another mailbag because they're fun. And every time I do want to get more mail the following time, which is fun as well. Put in there, if you really do know me and put in there, if this, you don't have to use a fake name. If you don't want me to use your name, just put in there, don't use my name, but this is so-and-so. Because I've got stuff and it'd be like, I don't even want it'll have one name on this is from so-and-so, and then you look at the email and the email address is their real name, and I'm like, okay, I know you, so so. But put your real name and just say, hey, don't use my real name, and I won't. But get that mail stuff into me. Don't suck. Be good to people. Don't die.